As a result of YouTube and the internet being plagued with false information about what people are calling colloidal silver, I wanted to show you the production of the chemical colloidal silver. And in this presentation, I am not making any medical claims. I realize that some people make medical claims pertaining to alternative medicine and the substance colloidal silver. I'm showing you this as a result of scientific testing of a chemical called colloidal silver, properly manufactured colloidal silver. And I'm going to show you the process to come up with colloidal silver, that which truly is colloidal silver. And this is the apparatus that you're seeing. It's a 10,000 volt AC, electrically generated current, and the device is in this container. You see pure steam distilled water. To manufacture properly made colloidal silver, you have to start with pure, 100% pure steam distilled water. The reason why it really irks me is I see these people producing what they're claiming is colloidal silver, but they're using tap water, they're putting minerals in the water. Regular tap water has minerals in it, which would, of course, react with the silver metal, making compounds of silver, which would not be colloidal silver, but would be silver compounds. Therefore, you could not claim that what you were manufacturing would be colloidal silver. It would be compounds of silver. So, I'm going to take the top off of the machine and try to bring this a little bit closer to you. And you can see dangling from this machine this bar. This bar, the arc bar, is made out of 99.9999% pure silver. Also, if I turn it this way, you'll see dangling from it these little devices. If I can get it where you can see it, here and here, it looks like they're made out of silver wire, and it's also 99.9999% pure silver. To manufacture colloidal silver, it would have to be 99.9999% pure silver. Otherwise, you're going to get impurities, even impurities down to the parts per million. The impurities that you have in silver metal naturally in mining silver metal are things like lead, cadmium, arsenic, which is a metal, and other metals. Even to the parts per million, you would not want those poisonous metals involved in your end result, which is going to be pure colloidal silver. So I'm showing you the science behind this and explaining to you why what's being claimed that is colloidal silver is actually not pure colloidal silver. Even in impurities to the parts per million stage of those things like cadmium, lead, arsenic, and so forth, does not make colloidal silver. And so you don't want any impurities. That's why it's 100% pure steam distilled water, 99.9999% pure silver metal. Unless you start with ingredients this pure, you're not going to manufacture pure colloidal silver. The machine here is going to be using 10,000 volts AC electricity. What's going to happen here is these little arc bars that are on the sides, these little, what I call welding rods, the two wires, are going to pull by an electrical charge off of that center plate particles that are submicroscopic, that is, they are so small you would not be able to see them with the average microscope. They're going to pull these silver particles into the water here. And with this electrical charge of 10,000 volts will hold that pure silver metal particles, submicroscopic particles, in that water by an electrical charge. These particles that are coming off of that silver plate are going to be 0.001 microns or smaller. To give you an idea as to how small that would be, if you had a cell in your body and you had one of those particles in comparison to the size of that cell, it would be like the cell being the size of a basketball and that particle of silver being about the size of a particle of dust. So that's how small these particles are. So I'm going to turn off the lights and I'm going to turn on the machine and I'm going to show you how this works. This machine was, well, I don't guess that's going to work. This machine was about $1,000. I bought it in 1996 from CS Pro Ultra Professional System. And I'm going to turn the machine on. And you'll hear a cooling fan, which is going to take to cool this. I've already set the timing that the process is going to take 2 hours and 14 minutes. What that's going to do at 2 hours and 14 minutes through much experimentation and through independent laboratory studies, it's going to produce in here exactly 20 parts per million concentration of silver particles in that water. Now, I'm going to hit the button, and if you'll watch over here on the side, it should either throw off a ultraviolet spark, or if there's enough conductivity, it will pull this water up onto those wires. Okay, you could see on that side there for a moment that it had a ultraviolet spark. If you can see closely enough, it's literally pulling the water electromagnetically up onto those wires with 10,000 volts of electricity. If I could zoom in close enough, you'd see here on the two sides that water is literally going in an upside down tornado-like shape up onto those wires, the silver wires on each side. Now that's a lot of electricity, 10,000 volts, to suck that water up onto those arc bars, I guess you would call it. So it's begun the process now. And what it's doing is on that center long plate, it's pulling particles of silver at 0.001 microns and smaller into this water. Well, it of course remains clear, so how would you know if it's actually doing anything? How would you know that there was any silver in that? Would you just take my word for it? Well, down here below, and I'll back the view out, and I've got 2 quart jars underneath. So I'm going to adjust the. Okay, I've got 2 quart jars, and I've got a flashlight right here. These 2 quart jars, this one contains pure steam distilled water. Now, if the water was regular water out of the faucet, you would be able to see probably some minerals in it. But pure steam distilled water has no minerals in it. In this jar, I have colloidal silver that was properly manufactured, and they both look like they've got clear water in it, except this had been already processed months ago, and it's got the colloidal silver. Now I'm going to take this flashlight and I'm going to shine a beam through it. And in it you will see in this one the light scattering back. What that is those particles of silver here that are submicroscopic, 0.001 microns and smaller, are like billions of little tiny mirrors inside the jar. Whereas here, there is no silver or any other mineral in it, therefore the light does not scatter back. This is called the Tyndall or Rayleigh effect, used to detect colloids. When we use the term colloidal silver, the term colloidal, you have to have two things for something to be colloidal. It has to have particle sizes 0.001 microns or smaller. The majority of what is being produced that people are claiming is colloidal silver is not colloidal at all. The particle size is not 0.001 microns or smaller. And the second thing is these particles, for it to be a colloid or colloidal silver, the particles must stay in suspension or be suspended in the water. In other words, silver, being very heavy as a metal, would, of course, if I just had silver powder in here, it would settle out. And you would not be able to see anything here. It would be as clear as this. So I'm going to take the flashlight beam and I'm going to move these wires out of the way temporarily. Hopefully. And I'm going to take the flashlight here, and you can see in this first jar, which is the colloidal silver, you can see, should be able to with that camera, a beam going up and down in it. However, in the second jar, which is the steam distilled water, it has no minerals, no particles of anything in it whatsoever. But here you can see that light beam where the particles of silver are backscattering the light. This is the Tyndall or Rayleigh effect for colloids, to see that there is something that is permanently suspended in that water, and that is the silver particles that are backscattering that light like a million tiny little mirrors. But the particles are so small, 0.001 microns or smaller, that you cannot see individual particles of the silver. So now I'm going to focus back in on the machine itself. And for another 2 hours and 9 minutes, this is going to be running. The result is going to be in here the same as what I have in the jar, which is 20 parts per million of silver metal that is 99.9999% pure in pure steam distilled water. That is correctly manufactured colloidal silver. It is nothing but pure silver and pure water. This colloidal silver had been tested using this machine with 3 independent laboratories. Each one of them were not told what it was that they were testing, and each one of them said that the impurities in that silver were in the parts per billion range. In other words, they use a term NDT, or no detectable trace of any impurities whatsoever, and their chemistry and their devices that they use to test it with, their scientific devices, were not able to find any detectable trace of any impurities whatsoever. In other words, what you have, the end result, is 100% pure colloidal silver. So you see here the correct manufacture of a chemical called colloidal silver. Would like to talk for just a minute about fake colloidal silver. Some of the things that people do that they're claiming are colloidal silver is, number one, they use low voltage DC electricity, like 9-volt batteries or something like that. They use a silver metal that is not 99.9999% pure silver metal. Therefore, they come up with extremely large particle size, which would be chunks of silver oxide. Silver oxide is tarnish. If you took a silver spoon or something out of a drawer that had been there for many years and it had turned black, that's tarnish. That's silver oxide. So essentially what they are manufacturing is tarnish water. The particle size is not 0.001 microns or smaller, therefore it is not colloidal, nor is it silver. It is a compound of silver called silver oxide. That's why they end up with something here with low voltage DC generated using something that's not pure silver. They end up with silver oxide water. It is not colloidal, nor is it silver. Another thing that's done many times, originally in the 1920s and even further back than that, they made something called mild silver protein or strong silver protein. What they did was they took egg white and they powdered silver metal. And of course the silver metal could not be powdered to the particle size of 0.001 microns or smaller. So they had silver dust and they mixed it in with egg whites to try to make that egg white hold that silver metal up in suspension. Therefore, because it would hold it in suspension, because that egg white was so thick, they could claim that it was colloidal and they could claim that it was silver. The only problem was that it was not a true colloid because it wasn't 0.001 microns or smaller, and the silver would combine, and you'll find this in many applications where people are trying to make, they think, colloidal silver, where they're making a compound of silver, where the silver actually has a chemical reaction with whatever other ingredients are there, like with the egg whites, with the mild silver protein or strong silver protein. And as a result, people get heavy metal poisoning. And so I've done the tests on this particular colloidal silver at 20 parts per million and tested it using the Environmental Protection Agency standard and OSHA standard for exposure to silver. And 20 parts per million of colloidal silver in this water, if you did the math on how much they say exposure to silver it would take to cause some sort of adverse reaction, you would find that you would have to drink about 200 liters a day of that for it to cause any adverse effect, and of course nobody's going to drink 200 liters of anything a day. So you have stuff that's put out there on the market that they're calling colloidal silver that is not colloidal, and it is not silver. But perhaps for the first time here you're seeing something manufactured that is 100% pure colloidal silver.